What if I told you that almost every dollar you think is money is actually someone else's unpaid debt? That the system we call modern finance was built not to create wealth, but to create unending obligation. Debt that never gets repaid is not a mistake, it's a feature. It's a story that goes back centuries, shaping empires, collapsing markets, and keeping billions of people trapped in cycles they barely understand. Today, we're going to uncover the hidden architecture of a system built not on money, but on promises, illusions, and debt that can never, and was never meant to, be fully repaid. By the end of this video, you'll see why the debts of yesterday shape the crises of today, why the financial resets of history often fail, and how even you are tangled in a system far older and more powerful than you think. Part 1. Setting the stage. The origins of unrepayable debt. To understand debt that never gets repaid, we have to travel back, as far back. Long before Wall Street, before the Federal Reserve, and even before coins were minted, humans understood the power of obligation. Ancient Sumerians, in Mesopotamia, the very cradle of civilization, kept the first known debt records on clay tablets. These weren't just IOUs, they were instruments of control. Farmers borrowed seeds and food to survive, knowing they would have to repay with interest after harvest. Debt was survival. Debt was power. And most importantly, debt was never meant to be fully repaid. Why? Because debt is not just financial. Debt is social, political, moral. In Mesopotamia, kings would periodically cancel debts to prevent uprisings, a practice called jubilees, but the cycle always resumed. Farmers borrowed again, rulers collected again, and the debt machine churned. Fast forward a few centuries, and the same principle reemerges under new guises. In medieval Europe, merchants created letters of credit, and governments issued bonds to finance wars. Every major conflict in history, Napoleonic Wars, the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, was funded by borrowing, with little expectation of repayment in full. And here's the twist. Those who lent the money were not naive. They understood something crucial. The system doesn't collapse because debts go unpaid, thrives. Part 2. The rise of modern finance and structured debt. Jumping to the 17th and 18th centuries, we see the rise of modern banking, central banks, and the first national debts. England, after its numerous wars with France, created the Bank of England in 1694, issuing government bonds to fund military campaigns. Investors were promised interest, but rarely was the principal repaid. And that's the key. The system is designed to roll over debt indefinitely, creating new obligations to pay old ones. Colonial empires borrowed extensively. France and Spain funded colonies and wars with debt. By the time the American colonies rebelled, debts were astronomical. Governments had learned a secret. Debt is a tool not just for funding today, but for controlling the future. By the 19th century, this model evolved into global finance. The Rothschild family, often vilified in conspiracy lore, were masters of understanding this system. Lend to governments, collect interest, and control economic destiny without owning land or armies. Debt became invisible chains stretching across continents. Part 3. The breaking points. Debt collapses and crises, but systems built on unrepayable debt have breaking points. Consider the South Sea Bubble of 1720. England. Government and investors got swept into speculative madness over a company that promised to manage colonial trade and, by extension, massive returns. When reality struck, debts weren't repaid. Investors were ruined, yet the government remained afloat. Why? Because debt could be rolled over, restructured, and absorbed by new obligations. The bubble burst, but the debt system endured. Fast forward to the 20th century, the 1929 crash, the Latin American debt crises of the 1980s, the 2008 financial meltdown, all follow the same pattern: excessive borrowing, promises that cannot be honored, partial defaults or restructurings, creation of new debt to replace old debt. It is a system that is self-correcting, but only for the lenders, not the borrowers. Part 4. The fallout and failed fixes. Time and time again, humanity has tried to fix debt crises, debt forgiveness jubilees, post-war restructurings, Bailouts, think 2008 monetary resets, gold standards. Bretton Woods, quantitative easing, but here's the inconvenient truth. Every attempt at a reset has failed to address the root problem. Debt is not an accident, it's a system feature. It binds governments, corporations, and individuals into a cycle of obligation. When one layer of debt is canceled, another layer immediately emerges, often larger and more complex than before. Take the Latin American debt crisis. In the 1980s, countries like Mexico defaulted. The IMF and banks created structural adjustment programs, essentially new debt under a new guise. Millions suffered. Yet the system persisted. Richer lenders, poorer nations. Part 5. Modern parallels. The system today debt is bigger than ever. Total global debt surpassed $300 trillion in 2025, more than 350% of world GDP. Governments, corporations, and households are all entangled in obligations that can never be fully repaid. The U.S. government owes over $35 trillion, most of it held in bonds that will never be fully redeemed, only rolled over. Student loans in the U.S. exceed $1.7 trillion, many of which are effectively permanent for borrowers. Even modern financial instruments like derivatives are built on obligations, creating invisible chains of debt that ripple through the system with every shock. And here's the terrifying part. History is repeating itself. Debt cycles that destroyed kingdoms, nations, and markets centuries ago are now globalized and computerized, capable of collapsing economies in a matter of hours. Shocking patterns emerge. Wealth concentration. Those who control lending control destiny. Debt dependency. Economies rely on new debt to pay interest on old debt. Crisis inevitability. When debt grows faster than the capacity to pay, defaults, restructures, or bailouts follow, always transferring pain downward. Part 6. 3 takeaways. Debt is not a flaw, it's a design. The system is structured to create cycles of obligation, benefiting lenders and ruling elites over borrowers. Resets are temporary. History proves that every attempt to erase or restructure debt creates new debt layers. Awareness is power. Understanding the system's rules allows individuals, nations, and institutions to navigate or even exploit cycles instead of being blind participants. Part 7. Warning and open-ended thought. The debt system is not going away. In fact, it's accelerating with digital currencies, AI-driven finance, and globalized lending. Every crisis will likely be bigger, faster, and more interconnected. The real question isn't whether debt will break us, it's how prepared we are when it does. Will the next reset benefit the people, or once again enrich those who created the cycle in the first place? Part 8. Call to action. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden system controlling global finance, subscribe and hit the bell, because we're just scratching the surface. In future videos, we'll explore the mechanics of modern money creation, the role of central banks, and how you can navigate a world where debt rules everything. And remember, understanding the system is the first step toward changing your place in it.